It all begins in a battle where Canma and his party members face off against the Wyvern King. While the others face it head-on, Canma aims for a clear shot from a distance and talks himself into getting steady hands. Meanwhile, Mard, the party leader, vows to take the beast's head but makes the beast furious instead. When the wyvern takes a jab at them, Mard and the others flee to save themselves from its talons. Fortunately, the beast gets pierced in the head by Karma's arrow. As the wyvern bleeds, it falls and crumbles the city walls, so Mard attacks the corpse and pretends it screamed while the other party members hype him for disgracing his ancestors. Canma's party, also known as the Twilight Dragon, was formed by the top sorcerers at the Royal Academy and rose quickly. Although they used to be cool, Canma notices that Mard got arrogant the moment they earned the S-rank title. While they party after the battle, Mard calls Canma and informs him that he's out of the party. Surprised, Canma asks why, and Mard reveals that he's getting the boot because he upstaged him. After this, Mard explains that it's his job as a hunter to pick off the small fry and let him handle the boss. When Mard says that anyone who steals his spotlight gets the boot since the party is his, Canma asks if it's the booze talking and says he only stepped in to save the other party members. Hearing this, Mard gets furious, and the other party members hold him back from getting the thrashing of his life. Just then, Kasuinen chips in that he has some thoughts about Canma and says that it's unfair that they get paid the same, since Canma only watches their backs. Since every one of the party members agrees with him, Kasuinen states that the only reason Canma was allowed in the party was because the late headmaster recommended him and suggests he get lost. Seeing that the entire party agrees with this, Canma slams his hands into the table and states that he did his part, keeping the trash mobs from swarming in. However, when Mard disagrees and says they don't need his help to get by, Canma figures Mard is dumber than he thought he was. So he wishes Mard well and takes his leave. The next day, Canma wonders where he's supposed to work since the headmaster who scouted him was dead, so he worries he might not be able to afford medicines for his sick sister. Somewhere else, while the people talk about the victory of the Twilight Dragon against the Wyvern King, a carriage arrives, drawing the people's attention. Just then, Mabel approaches some men to ask them questions about Canma. Shortly after, when Artemis complains about their lack of leads, Mabel reveals that Canma has been kicked out of the party for a while, so Artemis suggests they head back to the Empire and put up search notices. In the capital city, Canma tries to sell off monster parts to a store owner who regularly bought them from him before, but gets turned down. After this, Canma figures he's got to leave the country since he couldn't get a job. While weighing his options, a carriage owner informs him that they're heading out, so Canma then gets on the carriage. Shortly after this, he senses the presence of a monster nearby through a firebird that dwells in his arrows. So Canma wonders why monsters would show up near a well-guarded border. Afterwards, he figures the monsters weren't targeting his carriage, but some other ones way off in the distance. Meanwhile, Mabel and Artemis rode in the other carriage, wondering where Canma could have gone. Just then, they hear a weird sound as a couple of monsters go after their carriage. While Artemis was alarmed by this, Mabel told her not to worry and stated that she couldn't let any of the monsters reach the town. So Mabel worries she might not be able to hold off the monsters with her earth magic. At the same time, Canma uses his Hawk-Eye spell, which enables hunters to survey a wide area from afar, and realizes that the monsters are poisonous and deadly even to veteran adventurers. So he gets off the carriage and arms his bow with an arrow, which he draws and lets loose. Immediately, the arrow flies towards the carriage and splits to take out the monsters. Just then, Mabel marvels at this as they hop off the carriage, wondering what just happened. Suddenly, Canma shows up, and on seeing him, Mabel exclaims while calling his name. When Canma identifies her, Mabel says she's glad he still remembers her. Since she was his classmate at the academy, Canma says he couldn't forget her nuclear warheads in a lifetime. Just then, Artemis joins the conversation and takes off her hood to introduce herself. On hearing her name, Canma freaks out, while Mabel explains that Artemis is the 8th Imperial Princess and she's her bodyguard. Artemis then explains that he was recommended by Mabel since the Empire needs skilled marksmen. After this, she adds that they showed up to scout him and found out that he had left the Twilight Dragon. Hearing this, Canma says he's happy about the offer, but asks if it's okay since he got booted out of an S-rank party. When he asks if that wouldn't cause problems for her, Artemis says that it doesn't matter since he saved them without scratching the horse or the driver. Hearing this from the princess, Canma accepts the offer, so the princess tells him to quit being formal with her. When Canma wonders if he won't lose his head for that, Mabel says that the princess is just like that. Afterwards, while the ladies did their thing, Canma silently thanked Mabel for helping him find a place where he is wanted. Suddenly, Mabel grabs his hands and asks why he spaced out. However, Canma's eyes almost fell when he almost crushed by the weight of her magical bubbles. Sensing this, Mabel pretends it wasn't intentional and apologizes. At the Magicus Empire, Charlotte, the vice president of the Walnut Corps, reports to the captain that she's gone through Canma's records and comments that his talent is exceptional. Just then, the captain points out that Canma is the one who took down the Dragon King and chips in that he comes from an abandoned frontier where people have given up on living. After this, he states that Canma's skill must surpass anything that the Academy could measure since he survived in a place like that. After checking Canma's grades at the Academy, the captain realizes Oliver Queen's got nothing on this dude. Meanwhile, as Canma and the ladies approach the Empire in the carriage, they arrive at a security checkpoint and are cleared to pass. While Canma stares curiously, Mabel explains that the security used a magic tool called a metal detector, surprising Canma. So Artemis adds that the Empire is second to none in terms of military and technological power. On entering the city, Canma peeks out the window at the sight of the majestic buildings, while Artemis explains that the buildings are built vertically to maximize scarce land. Impressed, Canma states that the roads are well paved and the carriage doesn't shake, so the ladies welcome him to the country and announce that he'll be meeting with the captain of the Walnut Corps, Artemis's private unit. When she adds that he'll be interviewed, Canma suddenly folds and wonders if he's up for it. However, when Mabel grabs his hands and tells him he'll be fine, Canma gets lost in her orbs and closes his eyes to recite his hunter's mantra. Amused by this, Mabel tells him to calm his nerves since her weapons failed to do that. Canma then thinks of how kind Mabel is and how he never thought she'd talk to someone like him. So he promises to do his best in the interview, and Mabel responds, saying they're all rooting for him. Shortly after, they arrive at the Walnut headquarters, and Mabel announces that she has brought Canma. After this, Marek introduces himself as the captain and tells Canma that he has heard a lot about him from Mabel. When Canma freaks out on realizing the captain is a talking squirrel, Marek says that the Walnut Corps is full of all kinds of weirdos. Just then, Charlotte hands Canma the unit manual and announces that he's about to take the interview. When he thanks her for the manual, Charlotte introduces herself, and Marek adds that she's the vice captain who assists him. Immediately, Marek taps Charlotte's rice cakes and apologizes, saying he admires her stunning figure. Suddenly, Charlotte grabs Marek by the throat and tries to send him to Squirrel's Paradise, making Canma wonder if he's in a sane environment. So Mabel informs him to be careful since the captain tends to cross the line sometimes. Hearing this, Marek says he's not into dudes. Afterwards, Artemis points out that Canma's nerves have settled while announcing that although they are a military unit, they keep things light. Just then, Canma realizes they're all just trying to make him feel at ease. Just then, Oscar, another member of the Walnut Corps, walks in and announces that he's back from patrol. He then fawns all over Mabel before noticing Canma. So he asks Marek why there's another guy in the room, and Marek explains that he's the sniper Mabel mentioned. Annoyed by this, Oscar freaks out, saying the unit was supposed to be his personal harem. However, the ladies disagree, so Charlotte cuts him off and suggests they get to the exam. Facing Canma, Oscar apologizes for losing his cool and states that he's also an examiner. After he suggests they head to the test site for the interview, they arrive at the earthen barrier, and Mabel tells Canma to relax. So, Marek explains the exam rules and states that his objective is to destroy the ice giant created by Charlotte within 10 minutes. During the test, he was protected with magic that could break after taking a hit, so the ice giant suddenly swung a right-hand hook at Canma, but he managed to evade this. Meanwhile, Oscar pulls out his pistol, thinking of how he once destroyed the ice giant in just a minute. Just when he thought Canma couldn't do better, he gets startled by a loud crash and realizes the ice giant fell before Canma. Shocked by this, Oscar explains while Charlotte asks Merrick if he's seen Canma's moves. In response, Merrick explains how Canma identified the giant's core and took it out. He then reminds Charlotte that Canma is a hunter who survived the land of monsters. Suddenly, a bullet was fired at Canma, but he dodged it. Surprised, he stares at Oscar, who states that he just got lucky while pointing a gun at him. After this, Oscar suggests they duel while Mabel tells him to let it go, since they've seen Canma's abilities. However, Charlotte tells her not to worry since they're both protected by her ice shield. The duel then begins with Canma dodging bullets and Oscar changing his clip. Just when Canma figures that Oscar's got only 20 rounds before reloading, he hurries out of hiding but gets held at gunpoint by Oscar. Despite this, Canma dodges the shots from Oscar's gun while Oscar pulls out an extra pistol. However, Canma defends himself with his bow, and the ice shield breaks as he puts some distance between himself and Oscar. Seeing this, Mabel says the match should be over and points out that close combat isn't Canma's strong suit. Just then, they spot Canma and Oscar getting fired up for more. While Mabel worries about this, Oscar charges at Canma in a close-range combat, leaving him no chance to draw his bow. From the stands, Merrick commends Canma's dodging skills, but points out that Oscar's shots aim to destroy Canma's hearing and force him into a trap. Suddenly, Oscar tries to take Canma out with a kick, but Canma leaps high. So, Oscar opens fire into the sky, but Canma suddenly lands out of sight, making Oscar ask if he's trying to play hide-and-seek. Shortly after, Oscar heads to a high ground where he can see the entire training ground. However, he still can't find Canma. Suddenly, the boulder he hides behind gets pierced by a shot from Canma, shocking Oscar. At the same time, Canma thinks of his ability to spot his opponent's location from their footsteps and figures his biggest flex is his ability to strike weak spots silently from a distance. So he draws another arrow and fires another warning shot at Oscar, who then gives up the fight. After this, Oscar announces that Canma passed the test, leaving Canma relieved. Later, Canma wakes up in an unfamiliar place, and when he wonders where he is, Rafir, the medic of the Walnut Corps, points out that he must have been worn out from the journey and battle. So she introduces herself while Canma stares at her impressively suspended racks. When Rafir notices this, she says it's fine, since it's only natural for him to be attracted to her assets. Afterwards, Rafir states that she heard of how he made Oscar surrender and explains that he's an S-rank fighter. While Canma marvels at this, Oscar sits up from a bed nearby and explains that in Magicus, the soldiers are ranked from S to C. After this, Oscar addresses Canma as his brother, surprising Canma, who then points out that he's not Oscar's sibling. Just then, Oscar throws his arm around Canma and says he's only acknowledging him because he was impressed. After this, the ladies arrive, and Mabel says she's glad Canma's okay. When Oscar puts on his flirting hat, Mabel gets furious and announces that he'll be sleeping in the men's restroom since he lost the duel. Hearing this, Oscar offers to treat her to a BBQ to apologize and welcome Canma. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Merrick discuss Canma and figure they might have just landed a game-changer. Seeing how the entire team acknowledges him, Canma realizes he might have found a new home. Later, Artemis' father asks her about the new recruit, and she tells him that his skills are no joke since he took down the ice giant and also subdued Oscar. Impressed by this, the king orders the Walnut Corps to prepare for battle since they've got reports about some strange sightings from the fairy realm. In the kingdom of Jeta Niga, the guild master informs Mard of a request to subjugate the volcanic turtle, but he responds with a middle finger and demands that the guild master show some respect for his name. When the guild master states that the request is an urgent one from the kingdom, Mard says they can't take requests from people who can't show respect. Just then, Kasuinen points out that the king is hosting a party at the royal capital, which will be attended by dignitaries from all over the world. In addition, he says that an S-rank monster could appear and cause damage if they don't deal with it. After he brags about being the strongest adventurer party in the royal capital, the guild master begs Mard to help out. So Mard gives a mocking smile and says he's got no choice since he's the only one they can rely on. He then tells the guild master to pay 100 times the reward they got for defeating the Dragon King. When the guild master freaks out, Mard says it's his job to negotiate with the kingdom. So the guild master agrees to this and states that failure is not an option, but the party members get pissed at him for belittling them. After his party members hype him, Mard says he'll go wipe out the volcanic turtles with ease. Later, Mard tries to catch his breath as he sweats profusely and wonders why the adventure is draining him so much. Just then, the noobs on the team point out that Mard is so cool and add that they're glad to be on his team. Hearing this, Mark feels on top of the world, while the other party members gossip about his penchant for being praised. In addition to this, Kasuinen points out that they've had way more thrashy fights since Canma left. Suddenly, the volcanic turtle charges through the forest, sending the adventurers into shock as they watch it approach them. Shaken by this, the adventurers fall to the ground, and the new party members realize Mard is so lame. He then asks why they didn't tell him a volcano turtle was approaching. In response, they said he should have noticed that himself. Facing another party member, Mard asks what happened to the support magic since his speed was always boosted, and the mage says she did her part. While Mard wonders if he used up too much stamina fighting weak enemies, the volcano turtle returns, shocking Mard. While the other party members flee, screaming of an imminent breath attack, Mard stands, expecting to join his disappointed ancestors. Surprisingly, a flight flashes out of the sky and pierces through the turtle's head while Mard watches in horror. Despite realizing he's seen that attack too many times, he couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, in Magicus, Canma had just shot an arrow, so Merrick asked if something was wrong. In response, Canma explains that he felt tremors from the volcano turtle and shot it down to prevent damage nearby. After this, the ladies arrive and thank Canma for ridding their path of monsters. The Walnut Corps has been assigned to attend the king's party as escorts of Artemis. So, Canma says he didn't do anything special and wonders why he grins like an idiot whenever Mabel talks to him. When he tries to convince himself that Mabel sees him as nothing more than a squad member, Mabel compliments his looks in a military uniform and states that they match. Afterwards, at the guest hall, Charlotte hands Canma a comms device while Merrick explains how it works. Impressed by this, Canma asks if it's okay to have such an expensive-looking device, but Merrick states that it's a special item he made. When Canma expresses his surprise to hear this, Rafir explains that Merrick is a magical tool maker who imbues spells into tools. Moments later, Oscar asks Charlotte why he's assigned to secure the hall inside with Canma, since he could perform better with a different gender. In response, Charlotte explains that since the host has prohibited carrying weapons at the party, they're the only ones capable of neutralizing threats barehanded. Hearing this, Canma asks if the security outdoors is all right, and Charlotte says that the garden will be guarded by golems controlled by her and Mabel. After the event begins, Merrick asks Canma how the event is going, and he reveals there's no one acting sus. Just then, someone calls Canma, and when he looks, he spots Hestia, the first princess of the Jaitaniga kingdom. Curious, Merrick asks Canma how he knows her, and he reveals he helped her a little while back. Just then, Canma kneels before the princess while she reveals that she's been thinking about him for a while. She then reveals that there was a report from the dragon Twilight that he had gone missing, surprising Canma. So he reveals that he got exiled from the party, and Hestia points out that the other rumors must be false then. When Canma wonders what the rumors are, Hestia reveals she heard that his party defeated the volcanic turtle without him. However, Canma debunks this and reveals that he took care of the beast himself. When he chips in that he's glad the kingdom didn't suffer any damage, Hestia offers to thank him with some gifts, but Canma says he can no longer accept gifts. When she leaves, Canma stares sadly at what he could have had, so Merrick asks him if the princess has feelings for him. Canma then says it's not possible since he's only a commoner. Suddenly, the lights go off, and Nama senses killing intent in the hall, so he activates his night vision and informs Oscar on the comms that an assassin is approaching Artemis. Just then, Canma takes up a plate and tosses it at the assassin, who then gets knocked out. On getting to the princess, Canma asks if she's all right, and she asks Canma what happened. When Canma explains that an assassin targeted her, he realizes the attacker's goal must be to kidnap important guests. So he scans the room and discovers that there are about 10 weak assailants inside the venue. While he racks his brains to figure out what's going on, Marek suggests he work together with everyone on the team by giving orders on the enemy positions and letting them handle it. Hearing this, Canma gets his first feeling of what it means to be a part of a team, so he decides to fight alongside his comrades. Marek then informs the team that Canma will give directions on the enemy positions, using his night vision, and tells the team members what to do. A few hours later, the light was restored, and Artemis announced that the intruders who snuck into the venue had been suppressed by her bodyguards. When his team members thank him for the good work, Canma thinks he's lucky to be on a team where he's trusted. Suddenly, Marek gets notified that reinforcements are needed outside the venue, so he asks Mabel what happened, and she reveals that a dragon carrying monsters invaded the garden. Immediately, Canma heads out, and a maid hands him his bow. So he thanks her and shoots the phoenix arrow to survey the vicinity and spot monsters. He then spots the ladies stationed outside resisting the monsters. At the same time, Mabel asks Canma for directions on what to do, since the dragon doesn't flinch despite their attacks. Hearing this, Canma wonders if the dragon is immortal, but on looking closer, he spots the scar on its eye and realizes it's the corpse of the Wyvern King. So he informs Mabel that the enemy is a dead monster, making them wonder how it's moving. Canma then announces that he'll find whoever is controlling it. Suddenly, he spots a swarm of mosquitoes and wonders if they're the ones controlling the corpse. When Charlotte suggests he run away immediately, Canma refuses and says he has to locate the person controlling the mosquitoes. After this, Canma decides to take down the mosquitoes and shoots a star arrow, which splits into many arrows and takes out the mosquitoes in their numbers. However, Canma feels the killing intent stronger than before, so he tries to locate the attacker with his hunter senses, but can't. Just then, he gets an idea and asks Mabel to dig up the garden floor. Immediately, Mabel casts a spell that digs up the garden floor, and they find a massive hole underneath. After Mabel moves out of the rubble, Canma heads into the hole in the ground and draws his arrow, thinking the enemy must be spawning the swarm in the sewers. Suddenly, something large breaks out of the hole, throwing Canma out of it. Inside the venue, Marek announces that they are on high alert and anyone unarmed should stay inside the estate. Curious, Oscar asks what's happening outside, and Marek reveals that they've appeared. When he fills them in on the situation, Rafir points out that they're yet to explain the demon race to Canma. In response, Marek says he never thought they'd appear anywhere outside Magicus. Just then, Hestia overhears the conversation and says it's impossible since the demon race was wiped out long ago. When she narrates that the hero god destroyed the demon king and his followers, Marek hops on Oscar and suggests they support Canma. On their way out, he asks Oscar if he brought the prototype, and Oscar says it's in a carriage outside the venue. Meanwhile, after Canma lands on one of the golems, Mabel and Charlotte watch a demon rise from the rubble and wonder what it is. Inside the venue, Hestia says she's never seen a monster like that before, and Artemis explains that it's a new species with a massive insect body as strong as steel. In addition to this, she explains that they appeared in the Empire 10 years ago and had wings shimmering with light particles. Back then, the monster spoke and called itself the Demon Insect Clan. Outside the venue, the demon calls the humans inferior creatures and commands them to surrender the leader of the nation or be devoured by the buzz. Suddenly, a swarm of insects charges towards the golems, and while the ladies struggle to restrain it, Canma pulls the dragon arrow, the devastating strike that took down the Dragon King and the volcano turtle. The moment he fires the arrow at the demon insect, some mosquitoes take the hit, and the demon insect attacks Canma. However, the golem he stood on took the hit, while Canma landed safely. He then tells Mabe and Charlotte to stay back because the demon is clearly different from the others. After this, he observes that the demon insect isn't making any breathing sounds and wonders if it's really a living creature. Meanwhile, Oscar aims for the demon insect's head with a sniper and takes the shot. Suddenly, the demon insect takes the hit while Canma asks how much damage his shot dealt. In response, Marek says that although the exoskeleton of the demon insect is steel-like, they managed to do some damage. Just then, Oscar draws the attention of the demon insect while Marek explains that they just used the only bullet they had. So Marek informs Canma that they'll distract the demon insect to give him a chance to snipe its cracked head from afar. Immediately, the demon insect attacks Oscar and Marek, but they make it out thanks to Charlotte's ice shield. In retaliation, Marek shoots some super knockouts at the demon, who then asks if it's New Year's Eve. Just when the demon orders the Buzz to go after them, Charlotte points out that the Buzz behave like sewer-hatched insects, so Mabel buries the ground to prevent them from spawning. At the same time, Canma spots the hole left by Oscar's bullet and infuses the dragon arrow's power into the star arrow to forge a single beam of light. After this, Canma draws his bow and shoots the beam of light through the demon insect. While his comrades watch in anticipation, the demon insect collapses while its driver wonders why he's on the ground. Just then, he realizes he was shot down by Canma and wonders how that happened. Since it's a disgrace to the demon insect clan, the demon insect driver figures the insect king will end him. Meanwhile, Canma thinks about the intel he's gathered about the demon insect clan in the battle. He then observes the wing movement of the insect demon and figures it will retreat into the sky. Just as the demon insect takes off into the sky, Canma draws his bow and shoots an arrow, which blows up the insect demon in the sky. When this happens, people from the neighboring kingdoms mistake the explosion for fireworks since it happened near the castle. Mard, who was outside at the time, sees it and heads back into the house. Just then, he spots Kasuinen rocking one of the new girls and asks what he's doing. In response, Kasunian says he'd rather bond with his comrades than worship anyone. So, Mard heads back out and beats himself up for almost getting crushed by a volcanic turtle. Suddenly, some armed men in armor spot him on the balcony and seize him. While they drag him away, some demon dude from another world watches and announces that he's found a rare specimen, a human species bestowed with special roles at birth. With a single glance at Mard, he gets information about his abilities and realizes that Mard's superhuman strength burns bright with jealousy. So the dude comments that if Mard has superhuman strength, then he could withstand experiments as well. In the Jada Niga kingdom, Mabel and Charlotte join Canma, and he says he's glad they made it out safely. At the same time, Oscar arrives on the scene with Marek, who then commends the ladies. When Rafir arrives, she suddenly hugs Mabel, making her wonder if something is wrong. Rafir then says she was worried and holds Mabel like a dude would hold a lady. After she gives Mabel another weird hug and adds that she needs to take care of even the smallest wounds, Mabel tells Rafir there's no need to worry. Hearing this, Oscar says he'd like Rafir to treat his wounds too, but she tells him to heal himself by spitting on his wounds. As she turns to leave, Oscar asks if she was okay handling things back at the venue, and she responds by saying she put a spell on the guests to prevent any chaos. Shortly after, Artemis joins them and says she's glad everyone made it out safely. She then explains to Canma that some years ago, a new race of demons called the Magic Insect Tribe suddenly appeared and caused considerable damage. Ever since then, various squads, including the Walnut Corps, have been formed. The next day, while they celebrate, Mabel commends Canma again, and just then, he realizes it's his first time seeing her in casual clothes. Just then, Mabel catches him staring and asks if something is wrong. When he says that it's nothing, Charlotte joins them, and he sees her in a different light. When she glances at him and finds him staring, she responds with a chuckle, surprising Canma. A few moments later, Artemis and Rafir show up, so when he checks them out, he realizes Artemis is the refined kind of lady while Rafir is a proper baddie. Suddenly, Marek jumps on him, interrupting his thoughts, and asks if it's okay to turn down the king and Princess Hestia's welcome. At the time, Canma had been summoned by the king of Jera Niga to thank him for the event and to apologize for the rudeness shown by the Twilight Dragon. After this, they offered to grant him a noble title as well as an engagement to Hestia if he returned to Jada Niga. Despite feeling honored, Canma refused the offer, saying he had found a new home where he had people he trusted. Hearing this, Marek comments on how touching that sounds, while Oscar chips in that their bond is now stronger than ever. Afterwards, Marek suggests they get drunk and tells Charlotte to put it in the squad's expenses. When she voices her disapproval, Artemis offers to cover the cost and tells them to eat as much as they like. Canma then asks Artemis if it's okay for her to come all the way to town, and she explains that she enjoys sneaking into town. In addition to this, she states that she goes on strolls and visits the tailor a lot since she loves fashion. After this, Artemis reveals she picked the Walnut squad uniforms and asks Canma what he thinks about it. He realizes how clueless he is about fashion. So, Rafir points out that the outfit must make him battle his flagpole all the time. Some minutes later, Mabel tells Canma about how cool he looks taking down the enemy in one strike, but he says it's because he had everyone's help. However, Charlotte chips in that they don't know what could have happened if it weren't for his efforts. So she offers him a bottle of drink while Rafir offers him some fish. Seeing this, Mabel gets mad and accuses them of trying to confuse Canma. When Rafir insinuates that Mabel is just jealous, she denies it, so Charlotte says she can offer more to Canma. When she adds that she has always wanted to have a proper talk with Canma, Rafir accuses her of being forward. Just then, Rafir leans on Canma, and Oscar points out that he is right there if they're moved by looks. Hearing this, everyone glances at Oscar like he'd shown up for an interview in pajamas. So after the ladies have had enough fun fawning over Canma, they decide to call it a night. Oscar and Rafir offer to walk Artemis back to the castle while Charlotte chooses to escort Marek, leaving Canma and Mabel. As they head home, Canma thinks about how he had fun with the ladies and broke every hunter's code since a hunter doesn't act for praise. He then silently apologizes to his ancestors for giving in to his desires. Sensing this, Mabel asks why he's muttering, and Nama says it's nothing. A few moments later, Mabel presents a charm to Canma, and on seeing the phoenix bird charm, he thanks her for the gift and says that he'll treasure it. Meanwhile, in Jadaniga, Mard sits in a dungeon all tattered and battered. He then comments on how the queen's kind look doesn't match her brutality. Apparently, he had been beaten up by the queen for exiling Canma and making him end up in Magicus. Just when Mard thinks nothing is going right for him, he hears a sound and is surprised to find out that the lock to his cell has fallen off. After wondering if it's a trap, Mard decides he won't end up rotting in jail and kicks open the door. In an unknown world, while Usurica, the driver who drove the demon insect, watches Canma's footage on a screen, Dragonfly, a class Magi insect, joins her and points out that her defeat was a masterpiece. When Usurica shuts him up, a holographic feed comes up and George, a demon, pops up. When he asks why they're being noisy, Dragonfly reveals that Usurica is whining because her machine got thrashed. He then offers to go have some fun with Canma too. George then tells him to do as he pleases, surprising Usurica. George then reveals that he found something more interesting. Curious, the insects ask if he found someone stronger than Canma, but George says he found someone more persistent. Confused, Dragonfly points out that George is still into weird stuff and decides to launch his machine. Back on Earth, an insect-like UFO suddenly appears in the sky and lands somewhere in the mountains. Meanwhile, in the Magicus Empire, Mabel walks into a room with some pudding and offers them to Canma and Charlotte. When Canma expresses his surprise to see her baking, Mabel reveals that cooking is her hobby. Just then, Oscar walks in and claims he's reporting for examiner duty. Curious, Charlotte points out that the test took a while and asks if the candidates were talented. In response, Oscar narrates how a weakling showed up claiming to be an S-rank adventurer. When Charlotte asks Oscar what rank he assigned to him, he says he put the dude on a C rank and wonders if he'll manage. Afterwards, Canma asks if S rank is the highest in the Empire, and Oscar explains that there are A, B, and C ranks. However, he adds that a few S-rank squads exist as well as exceptional S-ranks beyond that. While Canma thinks about this, Oscar chips in that the SS rank isn't a dream since he has never met anyone as rare as Canma in all his years as an examiner. Canma then reminds Oscar of when he cornered him using 2 pistols during the test. So Oscar asks if he's still keeping a grudge and reveals he got excited about meeting someone strong after a while. Just then, Mabel asks about Rafir, and Charlotte reveals that she asked her to bring Richter. Not long after this, Rafir walks in with Richter and apologizes for keeping them waiting. On entering the room, Richter points out that there's a sweet scent, while Charlotte introduces her as the big brains of the squad. On checking her out, Canma figures she's slender and says it's nice to meet her. Just when he tries to introduce himself, Richter ignores him and heads for the pudding. So Mabel points out that Richter's got a soft spot for sweets and tells her to have them all. Afterwards, she introduces herself to Canma, and Rafir explains that Richter develops the bullets used against the insect tribe. On hearing this, Canma asks if she can enhance his arrows too. Just then, Richter realizes he's an archer and requests to see his weapon. On checking out the bow, she says she's never seen the material before and asks Canma about it. In response, Canma says his grandfather told him it's an elven bow made by forest fairies. So Richter tells him to give her some time, and on staring into his eyes, she says she's interested in them. She then asks him to visit her lab sometime to show her every inch of his body. On hearing this, Canma freaks out, while the other ladies stare at the duo. At the C-Rank headquarters, some adventurers meet Mard for the first time and realize he must be the rookie Oscar talked about. Gatto, another adventurer, introduces himself to Mard, but he scoffs and says he's an S-Rank adventurer who can't get friendly with C-Rank nobodies. Just then, one of the adventurers points out that she heard he's a branded criminal from Jeta Niga. Meanwhile, Mard calls Oscar a narcissist for assigning him a C-Rank, but the other adventurers tell him to watch his mouth since Oscar is the most powerful in the country. Gatto then points out that in the country, the ranking is merit-based and can't be gotten with money or connections. The other adventurers then discuss Oscar's discovery of a new S-Rank member of the Walnut Corps and wish they could meet him once. Gatto then leans on Mard's shoulder while telling him to talk less and train more if he wants to rise. However, Mard slaps off his hand and threatens to crush the Walnut Corps and rise to the top. When he threatens never to forgive anyone who gets in his way, the C-Rank assault squad gets summoned and informed of the appearance of an S-Rank monster in a forest. When they get ordered to evacuate the residents, Mard thinks it's a lame mission. Meanwhile, Artemis informs the Walnut squad that all tanks have been summoned for support and charges them to defend the country. Just then, Charlotte tells Canma that it's time to test his new technique. If you watched all the way to the end, confuse the fake fans by commenting RIP Canma. Drop a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching.